Bridges help us overcome obstacles. Bridges help to facilitate the movement of goods that benefit us economically. Bridges connect neighbors and communities. Bridges are essential infrastructure for our mere survival. Hi, I'm Roshun Austin, cultural anthropologist, chief executive, and neighbor. Welcome to another episode of Bridging Memphis. Today I'm joined by a very good friend in community development, one of my favorite neighbors in North Memphis, Miss Quincey Morris. We started a dialogue earlier and we just didn't have enough time to finish. Ms. Morris has been the executive director of the Klondike Smokey City CDC for a couple of decades, and I've known her most of that time. Thank you for joining me, Ms. Morris. We've been through some things together and I love working with you and working in Klondike, and wouldn't be in the neighborhood if it were not for you.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're one of my favorites, and we talked previously, and we just couldn't finish. There was so much to talk about because of the work we're able to do together, but more importantly, the work that you have been responsible for in this neighborhood that you've taken on, even when you were just volunteering for so long in Klondike and Smokey City, because you are across neighborhoods that sit adjacent to one another, but it's significant, the work that you've done in this neighborhood over the last few decades. I wanted to really kind of go back to where we left off. We kind of talked about how we met, but we didn't really dig into the transition of the organization to some pretty significant projects and talk about the growth of your organization over the years. So let's kind of pick up where we left off about the Klondike Smokey City CDC. Over the last 5 years, you look quite different than you looked in the first 20 years. Let's talk about that.
Well, prior to us getting into affordable housing, in the CDC world, the Klondike Smokey City CDC was known as doing soft CDC work because we weren't doing houses. We focused mostly on empowering people and helping people do services like workforce development,
Okay.
job training, domestic violence, crime prevention. And within the last 5 years, we have continued to focus on that, but we also are doing affordable housing. We got into affordable housing thanks to you.
Did I push you into affordable housing?
Yeah, I went dragging, kicking, and screaming.
Well, we could talk about a
Right,
story
right.
a story I have similar in Klondike, where I came
Right.
kicking and screaming.
Right.
But we as the African proverb says, many hands make the load light, and
Yes.
so I will take the credit or
Yes,
blame
yes.
for dragging you into this affordable housing world.
And it's been a challenge. We started out years ago with the University of Memphis, coming in, doing a research and getting the community involved by doing surveys and going door to door, getting the community's input on what they wanted. Also, after that, Studio Gang came in and they did focus groups with neighbors, churches, alumni about the Northside Project.
Yeah, well, let's take a pause, and we're going to really dig deeper into that evidence-based work. We don't often hear people talk about evidence-based, and so there's some data that supports why we're in certain spaces. And so we're gonna take a quick pause, and we'll be right back with more from Ms. Quincey Morris, Executive Director of Klondike Smokey City CDC, and Bridging Memphis. Welcome back to Bridging Memphis. Let's get more into this conversation with Ms. Morris about this evidence-based community development and engagement work that she and her team did with the University of Memphis, and later on Studio Gang with Jane Gang out of Chicago. Ms. Morris, let's go into a little more detail about what you all did with the University of Memphis and what led to that. We can talk about neighborhood decline over decades. We watched it from a thriving neighborhood established in 1899 to thriving many decades where Black families had established some degree of wealth. And then we started to see the decline, and you started having a conversation with the university. Talk to us more about what you did with the University of Memphis.
Well, we noticed that there was no history of Klondike anywhere. There was nothing in the libraries. There was no history. And we talked with the University of Memphis, and Antonio Rossetti brought his planning class to Klondike. And we talked about what we wanted to see, what type of documentation and data we wanted to see. And his students went door to door, knocking on doors, asking questions, doing surveys, and doing oral histories of Klondike, the background, the family history of Klondike. And that's what the University of Memphis did. And we found out that a lot of people, after the seniors passed on, the younger generation moved away, leaving the properties, some of the properties. And we addressed the issue of crime in a sense because we had a striving neighborhood watch where we had a block captain on every street, and they helped report crime, and they helped check on their neighbors. We knew what was going on in the neighborhood because there was a sense of community. And we talked to the residents in Klondike to see what it was that they wanted to see to make their neighborhood better.
Yeah, that's important. Often, outsiders, and you were not an outsider, but often like universities and researchers come in and sometimes they're well-meaning, but they often dictate what people should have in their neighborhoods versus what they want. And I like to approach it where, people get to dream wildly. I used to say to people when my daughter was much younger, you should let children, for instance, dream wild. I mean, because somebody was the first at everything. And so whether it makes sense economically or not, we should allow them to remember what they had or what they want to see in the future. Because, it's an interesting tale that you talked about. Klondike was historically African American and established in 1899, so it wasn't necessarily white flight. We experienced it around Klondike, but it was probably more of a middle class flight that Klondike suffered from, and the people stayed in place and aged in place, but then they passed and their children didn't want to come back. But you mentioned earlier that you came kicking and screaming to development. I have to say that I came kicking and screaming to Klondike in general when I was asked to come and work here in Klondike. Initially it was around a study that you all also led with from the University of Memphis study and research and data to Studio Gang around the high school, which closed in 2016. And so I was like, no. I do not want to be associated with just this one project, and it doesn't positively impact the people in the neighborhood. Can you talk a little bit more about the Studio Gang work that led to this adaptive reuse of Northside? And tell us more about, I guess we need to discuss about Northside because people may not know the significance of that anchor institution in the neighborhood.
Well, Northside was closed in 2016, and shortly thereafter, after we did the University of Memphis partnership, Studio Gang was summoned, and they came in to see how we could revitalize Northside. And we did a lot. We gathered different segments of the community. We talked to churches. We talked to residents. We talked to the different organizations in the community. We also involved the alumni.
Good.
And we had the idea of, we know what Klondike and Northside once was, but what would you like to see in the future? How would you like Northside to be in the future? And we did focus groups with these different segments of the community, stakeholders. We also did surveys with the stakeholders. And Studio Gang created a document that is the groundwork for what currently is being used for Northside Square.
Yeah.
And that's how we got to this point. Also, in our relationship, we have not only came up with a plan with community input, because we believe at the Klondike Smoky City CDC, I can sit in the office all day and tell somebody what I think the residents want.
That's right.
But we have our finger on the pulse of the community. The community tells us what they want, and we try to get what they need. And our office is open from 9 to 4 every day. And people come in and they sit and they talk and they vision what they want Klondike to be like, and Smoky City. Also, we do have several different meetings, small meetings with residents on certain days. And we have a larger meeting the fourth Tuesday in every month, our monthly partnership meeting with MPD and certain heads of the city and county, and other nonprofits that we gather together, and we talk about what's going on in Klondike. What do we like to see in Klondike? And we have the department heads there, so our residents can speak directly to them and tell them what it is that they're seeing in our neighborhood and what we like to see corrected.
Yeah, I find that in community development, if an agency acts as more of a steward,
Yes.
and that you get residents buy-in there, and they kind of decide what they want, then it proves more successful than the top-down approach of actually doing projects absent the input of residents. And so, for people that may not know what Northside is, Northside High School was a very large state-of-the-art high school established in 1966 in a once very thriving neighborhood full of families, built for 1,200 students with an auditorium that would seat 1,800 students, faculty, parents. And it tells the story of the neighborhood's decline. You went from being able to host 1,200 to a high school that registered only 34 in its last year. 34, from 1,200 students to 34. And so they kind of talks about the neighborhood decline and the fact that our organizations, our partnership, have been able to pick up so many vacant and abandoned properties. I know there was some skepticism, and there probably still is some skepticism by alum that wanted a school. They wanted Northside, or they wanted some other school to replace a school. And I remind people, I know that I had nothing to do with the school closure. I had very little to do with the decline of the neighborhood. And so maybe a school wasn't realistic. And so, and the neighborhood wanted some other things. They wanted this community hub idea. I didn't come up with the concept. I'm not the visionary for the concept of the hub. That was our neighbors. And so we didn't just stop at those plans, you know, so we continued during the pandemic, hosting probably 20, 24 meetings, so 2 years worth of meetings. And we don't stop even at meetings because I know that I'm not engaged as an individual by just meeting. Sometimes it's a building a connection, being neighborly. And one thing I thought about, one of the few neighborhood groups, CDCs or otherwise, that you see still active. I know one thing I come to that you all host is the night outs.
Right.
And so it kind of speaks to an old school neighborhood association. And you all have been doing it. How long have you been doing night outs in the neighborhood?
Almost 20 years. Every year we do our national night out where we sit in the backyard. We put food on the grill, and we have the neighbors to come in, and we talk about our community. We also have haircuts and for our young people. We have our elected officials stop by and sit down, and we talk about our community, and we fellowship. We try to continue the relationship with the community that has always been there. And it's not only Klondike, it's Smokey City together. We pull the two communities together, and we invite the churches, we invite the businesses, we invite the neighbors, and we talk about our community. We try to continue the spirit of the community, even though the communities had declined for a long period of time. That relationship between the CDC and the community remained, and we had some strong warriors in the community that was fighting for Klondike, fighting for Smoky City, that kept the dream alive. We always said Klondike and Smoky City could not be what it used to be, but what it is that you want it to be in the future.
Yes.
And what you want it to look like, how you want your children to be raised in a community where there's love and a sense of purpose. And I think that what happens when most communities decline, we forget to teach where we come from. And I think that's been one of the focus points of the CDC, is to remember Klondike was founded in 1899, and we want to continue that spirit of community.
That's right. That's interesting. You kind of talk about, you know, you got at this oral history that you all did in partnership with the University of Memphis, the City and Regional Planning Department. But recently, over 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the 100th birthday
Right.
of a city hero,
Right.
Tom Lee. And so people probably didn't associate Tom Lee with Klondike. And originally he wasn't in Klondike, but the city saw the significance of moving him to Klondike, you know, paying for his house. The Engineers Club paid for his house, and the CDC has that house now. It was given to you
Yes.
by an owner. Can you talk a little bit more
Yes.
about the Tom Lee?
Yes, Tom Lee's house is at 923 Mansfield, and that house was given to the CDC by the owner, Yvonne Imes, and we have maintained that property for years. We initially brought it up to standard, and we have recently received a grant from Momentum Labs to do oral history of Klondike Memory Project. But we focus or highlight Tom Lee and what he did, saving us 32 people on the Mississippi River, and how he had the spirit of community and citizenship. And we have a pop-up museum at 1396 Jackson, where we have the history of Tom Lee and what Tom Lee did. And we have other heroes of Klondike and Smokey City, like Almond Charlie Morris, Mr. James Clark, Katie Sexton, Mary Elizabeth Malone, Blair T. Hunt.
Oh, some great, some great
yeah,
people
yeah.
in Memphis's
In
history,
Memphis.
but probably international
Right.
history. You kind of skirted over that
Yeah.
whole grant process and how
yes.
significant that is
Yes.
with the Tom Lee
Yes.
Legacy Project, or the really the history of Klondike Legacy.
Yeah.
It's significant because only a few cities were awarded this
Right.
100,000 for each project.
Right, right.
And Memphis has two
Right.
awards in 1 year for Tom Lee's legacy and Klondike legacy, but also for the Calvary. And we're going
Right.
to talk a lot about the Calvary Episcopal Church site. But the fact that Memphis got two is significant. I think there were only 10 awards.
It was only 10 awards.
Only 10 awards nationally. Memphis got two, and one of those was the award received by the Klondike
By
Smokey
Klondike Smokey
City.
City.
I wanted to step back a little bit also to talk about, because the name of the show is Bridging Memphis, and you mentioned Klondike and Smokey City, and there's a serious divide. There's a barrier that separates the two communities, and your efforts to bring them together. That barrier being I-240.
Right.
It splits the neighborhoods in two. It's a physical barrier with multiple lanes, fast-moving cars, but you're working across those neighborhoods to bridge neighbors together. That's quite significant, not just to tell a history of the neighborhoods, but to bridge them together through. And you mentioned one of my favorite things is loving neighbors, and you kind of suggested that relationship building that you do with neighbors, so significant,
Right.
and for the present and for the future of our communities throughout Memphis and everywhere, just humankind. And so let's just dig a little deeper. Give us some data about what you've done in housing over the last 5 years.
Over the last 5 years, the Klondike Smoky City CDC has renovated a total of 12 homes for affordable housing rental. We renovated 2 community land trust houses, and we're in the process. Last year we became a CHODO certified
A community housing development organization.
right, a certified CHODO, and we're in the process of renovating a home at 936 Olympic, which we purchased. It was our founder, one of our founders, Miss Willie Mae Brooks. We purchased her home, and we're in the process of renovating that home for sale. So we've done a lot in
a short period
in
of
a
time.
short period of time.
Yeah, we're gonna take another break, but we'll be right back with more from Miss Quincey Morris and Bridging Memphis. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Bridging Memphis. We're here with Miss Quincey Morris from the Klondike Smoky City CDC. Thank you, Miss Quincey, Miss Morris, for joining us. Any closing thoughts? Because we weren't able to get through all of the different things that you've been able to do over the last few years, let alone what you've done over the decades. But any closing thoughts?
I would like to thank you for inviting me to Bridging Memphis, and I would like to say to all other people that are watching to get busy and get to work to make Memphis a better place to live.
Amen. Amen. We all need to participate. As I said before, many hands make the load light. And thank you, Ms. Morris, again. I want to remind you all to follow us on social media at The Works the Instagram tag is The Works Inc. _Memphis, Facebook, The Works Inc. And then later on, you'll be able to follow me on my website, RoshunAustin.com. And then the Works CDC can be followed, and you can find all of the links to our YouTube channels, our social media channels at theworkscdc.org. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Bridging Memphis.